Good morning. You are listening to National Real Estate Auction Radio. I am your host, Doug Dennison, and we are broadcasting from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida, the nation's oldest city at WFOY 1240 AM studios. Through the power of the internet, this program is being streamed worldwide on 1240news.com. This show will also be archived on RowAuctions.com, as they are the host of the program. Additionally, this show will be posted on YouTube.com. We're going to be talking about real estate auctions, past auctions, upcoming auctions, different real estate markets across the country. We got a lot of topics today to help us out. We've got several real estate and auction leaders calling in. Additionally, I was in Miami on Monday. There was a congressional meeting there talking about government surplus properties, 14,000 of them to be exact. We were in a abandoned courthouse in downtown Miami, a beautiful building. However, it did smell of a little mold, and we're going to have a caller in that was there with me as we listen to Congressman Mica, Congressman Denham, Congressman Diaz-Balart. And it was very, very interesting. Can't wait to talk to you about that. And just want to tell you that the radio show mission statement is to provide an educational experience for listeners in a promotional format for auctions across the country. In Miami, it was very interesting because it was an abandoned courthouse. Hadn't been used in 4 or 5 years, and it was opened up to basically give exposure to government surplus properties that are not being used. The property, again, has not been used for 5 years and cost the American taxpayer $1.2 million a year, each year. Just for holding costs, just for security, just to keep the AC on so it doesn't go moldy. The value of the property is deteriorating as we speak, and it needs to be sold to the private sector, in my opinion. The GSA has just put out a request for information that will allow the private sector to give their thoughts, and I thought that was a very good thing. Let's go on to our first caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Hello, Doug. This is Howard Steinholz from the Urban Group.
Howard, well, thank you so much for calling in. And again, you and I were together on Monday. Very fascinating. We were just telling our listeners as an introduction, we were in the David W. Dwyer Courthouse in downtown Miami, and we listened to a congressional hearing for about 2 hours from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., and I want to get your take on that. But first, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and tell us about the Urban Group.
The Urban Group is a South Florida-based real estate broker. We primarily work in real estate assets that are public sector assets. So much of our work is in government. We have a portfolio of work with agencies like HUD, the United States Marshal Service, and municipalities selling off their properties.
Well, very
We've
good.
been in business for 28 years.
Well, you and I have some past experience. We worked together in helping Sarasota County sell 2,000 taxes-cheated lots, and what that means is it goes back to the county and the city when people stop paying their taxes and basically give up their right to the property. And the county and the city had 2,000 of these lots that had been compiled for 10-plus years, tell us what happened, because it was pretty interesting. It was about 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think you're right, Doug. And the project that we worked together on was very unusual, and the results were great for Sarasota County. It brought properties that had been off the tax roll back into the tax roll, and if I recall, the total sales of those properties were $64+ million.
Yes.
Am I right
yes.
with that?
Yes. And to go back in history a little bit, the city and the county had offers for the 2,100 lots for about $14 million, and they were considering selling them because they thought it was a good idea. And then they did a request for proposal, and the firm that I was with, I was the auction project manager. We won, and it was great. And you were a contractor with us. You helped make it work. And it was 2,000 lots. And again, this is 5 years ago. So internet bidding was not really the norm at that time. And they asked us, when we won, to first put it out individually on the internet, and in this way their property owners that perhaps had a vacant property next door that they would want to buy would be able to purchase that, compared to a bulk sale of some kind, and then having that property owner who's wanted to purchase the property for maybe a number of years kind of being shut out. So we did it. We did it in 3 stages, and we really thought that maybe we were going to sell 500 of them on the internet. And then we actually booked the local high school auditorium, and we were going to then sell them in bulk, in parcels of 10, of 50, and of 100, to get rid of what we expected to be, 1,500 properties that were left over, and we were going to sell them to investors who would then sell them individually to make $1. But tell us what happened.
Well, it was like we sold everything, and everything was sold. Everyone had an opportunity to purchase property individually. So if there were local people, they were able to do that. And they also, it became, as I recall, it became sometimes a bidding war.
It was a bidding war. We actually had a system where it would discourage people. It's called sniping. It's a term that basically came from eBay. That if the deadline for an auction was 1 p.m., everybody would set their clocks to try to do the final bid at 12:59 and 50 seconds. And we thought that was, number one, unfair to the buyer, and number two, that it would be unfair to the seller, because there's probably somebody else that would be willing to pay more. So we had a feature called Auto Extend that would allow somebody to continue to bid as long as there was bidding in the next, I believe, 5 or 10 minutes. I can't remember what the actual timeline was. And in several instances, they kept on bidding 2 or 3 parties after the deadline in this 10-minute auto extend feature for another 2 hours. And talk about a bidding war. The actual for one that I remember might have ended at the deadline per se at 45,000, but 2 hours later the top bidder was 85,000, and that's just amazing.
Yeah, and it was I think it was a great example of what private sector can do to sell off surplus properties. Most times, government agencies sell properties without really marketing them or having foresight on the elements, and it required a good deal of due diligence. We had a due diligence effort, and in fact we had to pull out a number of properties.
Yes.
If you recall, because of environmental, we had a jay. It was a bird.
Scrub jays.
Scrub jays. Yeah. So we were sensitive to all of the right things, and those we were able to pull those out, and the county had kept them. I thought it was fascinating how this went off in a remote fashion. And the other part I think that was incredible about that effort was that we were able to close so quickly.
Yes. I remember that the properties, if you were going to be a bidder, you'd have to send in $500 per lot that you were bidding on. It really worked well. It was a little scary for us because I think we had about $16 million worth of deposits with the title company that people had sent in deposits, and that was a lot more than we ever figured, to be honest. And it was a very, very big success, and it's a great segue for what happened on Monday. And you hit it on the head when you said this is a great way how private sector can help government entities, be it federal, be it state, be it city, be it county, that have surplus properties, and instead of just burying them and allow them to stay on the books with no real plan, this brought $65 million back to Sarasota County and the city of Northport. So here we are on Monday, and it was a public meeting. It was a congressional hearing, and Congressman Denham and Congressman Mica and Congressman Diaz-Balart were there, and they were receiving testimony from the Honorable Frank Hull, Circuit Judge for the United States Court of Appeals, Mr. David Wise, Director, Physical and Structure Team, the United States Government Accountability Office, which is the GAO, and Mr. John Smith, Regional Commissioner, Public Building Service, General Service Administration. I believe he was out of the Atlanta office. And Congressman Denham and Congressman Mica have been going to properties throughout the country in an attempt to show the American public that the United States government have properties that they're just sitting on. And in fact, Congressman Mica put together a 40-page report a year or so ago that was called "Sitting on Our Assets," that these properties have been deemed surplus, they are abandoned. Tell us about the meeting. Tell us about abandoned properties. You're a commercial and residential broker in the South Florida area, in the Fort Lauderdale area. What happens when a property just sits there, please, Howard?
Yeah, I would also just want to make a comment about the hearing.
Yes.
Because I was astonished at the numbers of properties that had been held by government entities, the GSA, for so long, and in such great numbers, that I was astonished. And I think the fact that Congressman Denham has brought forward this item, and Congressman Mica, I think the public needs to know. But it follows a pattern when a government buildings become, in a sense, obsolete. It needs to change. In the case of the building we were in, which was a courthouse, it was an old courthouse that was built in the early 30s, and while it's being used, it maintains itself. It keeps alive. Once that property was abandoned, it loses life, and abandonment and hold time just deteriorate the building, especially older buildings. So whether it's a commercial building or a warehouse or even a single-family home, if you hold on to big properties for too long, that they begin to deteriorate. And it doesn't matter if you're in, you could say in Florida where there's humidity. It happens in cold climates too because of just not being used. What I think was remarkable from that meeting was the cost that the government had, the taxpayers had, for just holding that one building. If I recall, the cost to hold the building was $1.2 million a year.
Yes.
And they've had it for 6 years.
Yep.
With no real way to dispose of it.
Yep. And they also talked about a post office up in Washington, D.C., where they had done the same kind of thing. They had held a congressional hearing on the property, again, to bring exposure to the media and therefore the American taxpayer that these properties are just sitting there costing the American public and the American taxpayer not millions of dollars but billions of dollars. And the property in Washington, D.C., the post office, has been vacant for 10 years at a cost of $6.5 million per year in holding costs. That's $65 million that you and I had no idea about, and we're in the business compared to mom and pop at home, not knowing this and yet continue to pay taxes and continue to find out that taxes are increasing and that the government needs more. Well, if these properties, and there's 14,000 of them, and we're not talking residential, we're not talking Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. These are all warehouses, office buildings, tracts of land that have been deemed surplus properties. If these can be sold off and money's coming into the American taxpayers to stop, help at least the deficit that we're in, but almost more importantly, stop the holding cost. Again, Congressman Denham has talked about this deal could save billions of dollars for the American taxpayer. So this is really, really important. I want to ask you a little bit about what happens when a abandoned property is in an area. How does that affect area businesses and area property owners?
Well, it does affect it, because what you have is a vacant building that looks deteriorated. It doesn't help vitalize a community when you have abandoned buildings. And if you have an abandoned, it's like having a neighbor who doesn't take care of his house. The neighborhoods, there's an effect of that communities become deteriorated, and downtowns come deteriorated with that. So the one thing you need to do when you have abandoned buildings, in my opinion, is you have to seek ways to reuse the building, and one of that is sell it.
Right.
And what that does also, if you sell it to the public, to the private sector, you're going to bring taxes in. If you just hold on to it, there's no taxes coming in.
No taxes coming into the municipalities, and they need help too, right?
Right. When taxes, you collect taxes. You collect taxes for counties, for schools, for the cities, all of which is needed to keep the communities going. And when buildings, government buildings in particular, when they stay vacant, they stay vacant for some reason for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Doug, in that hearing, if I heard right, the GSA person who had the region,
mm-hmm.
seemed like what he said was in the last year they sold only $25 million worth of real estate. Is that correct?
For his region, which was
his region alone.
Atlanta, Southeast. It is a big region. It includes Georgia, Florida, neighboring states, I believe.
Alabama. It included Alabama.
Yeah.
But if you compare that $25 million for a year for government, think about what we did in Sarasota.
Exactly.
Where we had $65 million.
Yes.
And I got to tell you another thing. In Florida, we worked for the United States Marshal Service, which had forfeited properties, which were buildings and warehouses and single-family homes.
Right.
And we sold $22 million just in Florida.
Yep.
So
what you're saying
somebody's not doing anything.
What you're saying is that the government could be doing more to getting rid of these properties, and hopefully they're going to include the public sector by use of private sector auction firms, private sector real estate firms. This is their business. This is what we do all the time, and we're professionals at it, and we don't need to have more government employees. It's just not needed. We don't need to expand the deficit. We need to cut the deficit, and that's what's really happening. Hey, listen, thank you so much for attending the congressional hearing. It was a pleasure to see you again. Tell us how people can contact you, Howard.
Well, our company has a website. It's theurbangroup.com, one word, or just go online, theurbangroup.com. We have a 1-800 telephone number is 1-800-522-6226. But the internet is the best way if anybody's interested in looking at what the work that the Urban Group does. And Doug, I got to tell you that I'm so happy you invited me to that hearing, because I keep thinking about it, and it just astounds me.
It is astounding. Hopefully, through your work and through Congressman Dennison and Congressman Mica and the media, we're going to bring this to the American taxpayer. There will be a change. And Howard, thank you so much. I appreciate you calling in on a Friday morning.
Thank you, Doug. I hope to talk to you again.
Okay, take care now. All right. Howard Steinholtz from the Urban Group in Fort Lauderdale was at the congressional hearing. We're going to talk more about the congressional hearing. We're going to talk about an upcoming bankruptcy auction in Florida. Exciting stuff. Let's go for a pause. All right, we're back. This is National Real Estate Auction Radio Show. I am your host, Doug Dennison. We are broadcasting live from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida. We just had Howard Steinholtz on. He's the CEO of the Urban Group in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale area. And he and I talked about, number one, an auction that we did together for Sarasota County in Florida and the city of Northport. I was the auction project manager of a unbelievable sale that netted the city and county $65 million. And this was for 2,000 residential lots that were taxes cheated, which means that the property owners failed to pay their taxes and therefore gave up the properties to the county and the city. And they had offers in the area of $14 million, and And the council, the commissions were thinking of taking that offer, but instead decided to, instead of selling it in bulk, they want to give property owners that were nearby, that were looking at the lot next door that they wanted to buy to expand their property. They wanted to give them a chance to, buy that particular individual lot and not have to go after an investor who buys all 2,000 of them. And the bottom line is, we sold the properties for $65 million. It was all internet, and this was, again, 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago. And this was kind of before internet bidding was really the normal kind of thing that it is today. And just a phenomenal success, which then Howard talked about. This is what the private sector has to do to help the government sell these properties. If the government had sold these properties for $14 million, they would have left $51 million on the table. And this is what we're good at. This is auction firms, and especially firms that specialize in government auctions and sales, know what they're doing. They advertise properly. They get the most attention, and then they sell it at the highest possible price. And so Howard was at the congressional hearing in Miami, and let me just read a couple things that gives the segue to this. This was the advisory that was sent out in a news release a couple days before the hearing, and it says, advisory, congressional hearing in empty Miami, Florida federal building, hearing at the vacant David W. Dwyer Federal Building and U.S. Courthouse on Monday, August 6th. Washington, D.C., the congressional panel with oversight of the General Services Administration and the management of federally owned buildings will hold a field hearing in an empty federal building in downtown Miami, Florida on Monday. Transportation and Infrastructure Committee Chairman John Mica, who's from Florida, and Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management Subcommittee Chairman Jeff Denham, who is from California, will lead the subcommittee meeting. While GSA has become recently notorious for lavish conferences and junkets to exotic locations, the agency also has been responsible for wasting billions of dollars mismanaging vacant and underutilized federal properties across the country. Well, I was there and actually set up a booth for this radio show, the National Real Estate Auction Radio Show. We had a lot of reporters there. We had TV cameras there, and your host for the National Real Estate Auction Radio Show was there. And I was lucky enough to get a interview with Congressman Mica, who chaired this whole committee and has been a great proponent in selling these government surplus properties. Let's see if I can get this recorder to work and see if we can listen in to what we talked about. Okay, this is the National Real Estate Auction Radio Show. You're listening to Doug Dennison live from David Dwyer Courthouse in Miami. We have Congressman Mica, who just chaired this congressional hearing. Tell us what is happening, what happened for the last 2 hours, sir.
Well, we brought our congressional hearing to Miami because this federal courthouse that we're in has been vacant for 5 years. It's costing the taxpayers $1.2 million a year. The building is a historic building. It was built in the 30s, but it still has some great value, but it's deteriorated. Nothing has been done to find a plan to utilize this building, and unfortunately, like more than 13,900 other properties or buildings across the United States, and that are vacant or underutilized, our committee is trying to focus attention on getting these valuable assets turned into taxpayer assets rather than on the deficit column.
Well, it costs a great deal. This building costs how much per year?
1.2 million just to maintain. We started our hearings when I became chairman of the committee about a year and a half ago in February, and we've done 3 hearings in 3 vacant buildings, sizable vacant buildings in our nation's capital. The first one was in the annex to the old post office. It's sat vacant for 15 years. It's 2 blocks from the White House, costing $6 to $8 million a year loss. And in this year, we've turned it around. It will soon house a hotel. It'll have 1,000 employees, and it'll go from the deficit column for taxpayers into the positive column. Since then, we did another hearing, the most recent one, 11-year-old vacant building behind the Ritz-Carlton in Georgetown, valuable, most valuable property, 2.0 acres, sitting in the nation's capital, high rent district, not doing anything. They finally put a for sale sign on the building the day before the hearing today. At this hearing, the vacant courthouse in Miami, they put a request for some proposals and inquiries on the market last Friday. So Mr. Denham, who chairs the subcommittee, I chair the full committee, we're determined to take this campaign, in which billions of taxpayer dollars are lost across the country. And then we heard today testimony that the regional witness, he got a bonus for this, along with thousands of other GSA employees who they only constitute 1% of the federal workforce, got 10% of all the bonuses, and the bonuses actually were prohibited or discouraged by the Obama administration. So it's kind of sad commentary, not to mention the conferences people have seen on TV that we've revealed in our investigation, the one out in Las Vegas where the guy in the hot tub thumbs his nose at us, and the most recent one where they paid $20,000 for drumsticks and $250,000 for a one-day conference in Virginia. So this agency is definitely spinning out of control and needs some serious attention.
These 14,000 government surplus properties, this isn't Fannie Mae.
No. This is what the federal government holds as trustees for the American people. Courthouses like we're in, other real estate properties, assets, public buildings throughout the nation. Quite a few in the nation's capital. We did 3 hearings up there, but we're doing this hearing in Miami. Then we're going to go to the West Coast and do a hearing in Los Angeles next week. We're just trying to make certain that we aren't just swatting at the flies and missing the elephants. And these are huge elephant, valuable properties that the federal government doesn't have a clue of what to do with.
Well, you said something about the drumsticks and 22,000, but that's nothing.
Exactly. That gets all the public attention. The guy in the hot tub wasted $750,000 in a conference that was over the top. That's horrible. We cut that waste out. He's dismissed. Everyone around him is gone. But we have, again, thousands of buildings, properties just sitting idle, worth billions of dollars. Just think of the revenue that we could have coming in. Even this one building here in Miami, we've lost 5 years of revenue and actually cost the taxpayer. And it's got to be deficit money because we don't have it in the Treasury.
And let's say if this turned out to be a private sector buy this, and retail or hotel.
All kinds of possibilities. But the first time we're getting an inquiry to the private sector is last Friday, and they probably wouldn't have done it if we hadn't announced this hearing. That's the sad part. And the same thing with the property in Washington, D.C. They put the sign up the day before the hearing for sale. 2.08 acres, prime East Coast real estate in the nation's capital, behind the Ritz-Carlton in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., and just sitting there vacant.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much.
So good to be with you.
And your efforts.
Thank you, and we're going to keep it up. We're not going to let up till we turn this around. Thank you.
You bet. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Good. Okay.
MarkNet Alliance is a national, membership-based network of 41 auction companies. Our companies are successful auction professionals with proven track records and thriving businesses. The MarkNet companies have a staff of over 540 employees who are working hard every day to meet the goals of their clients during our ever-changing economy. MarkNet companies are able to achieve these goals through cutting-edge technologies and ever-growing investor pools. To view the hundreds of auctions currently being conducted, or for more information, visit marknetalliance.com.
All right, we're back listening to National Real Estate Auction Radio. I'm your host, Doug Dennison. We just listened to a recording of Congressman John Mica from Florida, who's been really leading the charge along with Congressman Denham in getting the word out that there's government surplus properties that are sitting idly and yet costing the American taxpayer not millions but billions of dollars. There's 14,000 of these properties. We were sitting in a courthouse, a huge structure, and completely vacant for the last 5 years, and it just sits there. And as a government, we need to sell these properties off. As an American taxpayer, we've got to let our elected officials know that this is not acceptable. We can't continue paying for these properties like the post office in Washington, which Congressman Mica said it's been sitting more than 10 years. I thought it was 10 years, but more than 10 years at a cost of $6 to $8 million a year. That's amazing. Amazing. And we pay for it in our taxes. So we need to tell our elected officials that this is not acceptable. And in fact, the congressional hearing ended, and Congressman Mica said, we're going to hold this hearing open for another 15 days to receive written testimony. And so if you are interested in finding out how to tell the government, tell Congressman Mica how concerned you are with this issue, how happy you are that he and Congressman Denham is pushing this issue, contact me, and I'll let you know what to do, how to do it, the time frame. Again, my name is Doug Dennison. You can email me at Doug at RowellAuctions.com. That's ROWELL auctions, AUCTIONS.com. Or you can call me at 904-325-3020. 904-325-3020. I'll let you know how you can send something in and actually make a difference. Actually attempt to make a difference in what the spending has been doing in Washington. We've got to make a change here. And I know there are regulations and far too many hurdles right now, in my opinion, for the GSA to get over to sell some of these, but they've got to work harder to sell these properties too. And so, again, GSA is the America's landlord, up to 1 million properties that they handle, an enormous job. But here are these 14,000 properties that need to be sold. They need to be sold because we need that money coming in. And number two, we need to make sure that we don't continue paying the holding cost each and every year on all these properties, which, again, Congressman Mica and Congressman Denham have received totals and summaries saying that the American taxpayer can save billions of dollars. That's with a B, billions of dollars. So I was very happy to travel down there. It's about a 5-hour ride. I was very pleased that they allowed me to set up my radio show booth and was able to have Congressman Mica come sit and take his time out of his busy day after he had just been in the hearing for 2 hours to tell us in a nutshell what is happening, what he's trying to do, how he's trying to do it. And again, they are going to these properties to gain exposure from the media, who then gets it out by TV and newspaper and emails and websites and blogs about this issue. Because if we can fix this issue, it is a win-win situation for everybody. A win-win situation for everybody. We need to cut taxes. We don't need to add more taxes to the American taxpayer. We need to cut taxes. And so if we can sell these 14,000 properties, number one, as Howard Steinholtz had told us earlier in the show, when you have an abandoned building, usually it's fenced. It attracts more crime. It attracts more vagrants. It's not a good thing for the local area and the local businesses. Now, just imagine if you're a restaurant next to this courthouse. Now, you had been used to having all the people, all the attorneys, all the judges, all the employees, all the people that go in and out of the courthouse stopping by at your restaurant and, getting lunch, getting breakfast, getting dinner, whatever. And now it's been closed for 5 years. How do you think that business is doing right now? Now, if we can sell this property and the other 13,999 properties, now it's going to go to the private sector. Now it is going to be someone who is going to turn the building around from a vacant, abandoned property to a growing concern and an entity that will attract new people to the downtown. They will hire new employees. They will buy goods and services, and contractors will be coming in. This is going to help the nearby businesses. And you know what? This new private sector buyer is also going to pay taxes to the local municipalities. Well, a government building and the government as the owner doesn't pay any taxes to the local municipalities. Do you think the local municipalities could use a little bump, could use a little help? I think so. And whether it is a property in Des Moines, Iowa, or Cape Cod, Massachusetts, or Miami, Florida, these properties need to be sold. These properties need to go to the private sector. They need to get these properties off of the taxpayers' shoulders. We need money coming in to offset the deficit. This is a win-win situation. And you, as somebody that listens to this program, or catches it on YouTube, or catches it on RALauctions.com, need to contact your elected official and tell them, and elected officials, and tell them that you think that these properties need to be sold off. You could use a break. You don't want more taxes. You want less taxes. You don't want to be paying for a property in Miami, Florida that has been sitting vacant for 6 years, 5 or 6 years, at a cost of $1.2 million each year. You don't want to be paying taxes on a post office up in Washington, D.C. that has been vacant for 10 years at a cost of more than $6.5 million a year. That's $65 million plus, folks. You don't want to be paying for that. You don't want to be doing it anymore. And so contact your local officials and just let them know how you feel. This is a win-win situation. This is not Democrats. This is not Republicans. This is not presidential. This is something that must be done, and it's got to come from us. It's got to go from the ground roots up, and let the elected officials take all the credit for it, because that's their job, to make sure that things go right up in Washington, D.C. Let them know how you believe this is a good thing. Tell them that you want these government wastes to stop, and allow them to work together. Tell them to go across the aisle, whether it's Republican or Democrat, whether it's Senate, whether it's House, and say, hey, we need to get this done, because it's a win-win situation for the American taxpayer. This is something that needs to be done. You'll be doing your elected official a favor by telling him what's happening. He may not know what's happening. She may not know what's happening. Listen, our sponsor is Rowell Auctions. They are a national real estate auction firm that started in 1936. They do online auctions, on-site auctions, and ballroom auctions. They have offices in Florida, New Jersey, California, Georgia, and have alliances with auctioneers and real estate brokers across the country. They do government auctions, bankruptcy auctions, and much more. They have a big auction schedule coming up, so check out their website at rowellauctions.com, or you can call them at 800-323-8388. That's 800-323-8388. Want to talk to you about a big bankruptcy auction happening in Ocala, Florida. It's going to be a bankruptcy auction of a 119-acre horse farm. It is going to be held on August 24th. It's going to be held on site. However, there will be online bidding available. Let me tell you a little bit about the property. It's got a corporate office with beautiful views. It's got 3-bedroom, 2-bath, newly renovated home for a guest or a manager. It's got 6-stall stallion barn with breeding shed and office apartment. It's got an 18-stall custom show stable with apartment, air-conditioned tack room, saddling station and arena, and a 60-foot covered round pen with viewing stand. It has another 18-stall wood barn. It has workshop garage with 3 large open bays and smaller bays with garage doors. All fencing is brand new. There's a gated entrance. They have 2 wells and 2 ponds. Again, this is in Ocala, Florida, which is called the horse capital of the world. This is going to be held again on August 24th at 11 a.m. If you want to know more about this property, go on rowellauctions.com. That's rowellauctions.com. Or give them a call at 800-323-8388. 800-323-8388. Additionally, there is financing available, bank financing available for this property. They have a preview coming up on Monday, only a few days from now, on August 13th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., a little late to beat the heat. On again, August 13th. We've had a great show. Very appreciative of Howard Steinholtz calling in. Very appreciative of Congressman Mica. After a 2-hour congressional hearing, coming over to the radio show booth in Miami, Florida, and sitting down and talking about what he's trying to do along with Congressman Jeff Denham. We are going to be continuing to work on this issue. Congressman Mica and Congressman Denham are going to be flying next week to Los Angeles. There's another courthouse there that has been sitting vacant. They're going after that and trying to tell the world that these properties need to be sold and that the American taxpayer is losing billions of dollars. Want to thank you for listening. We will be back next week. Enjoy your weekend with your family.